Hello, welcome to the We Weren't There podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ben.
I'm your other host, Max.
And today it is my turn to present the topics. And for the next two podcasts, I think I was especially inspired. My last hosted episode was on imposters, and I think I'm kind of on a kick. I'm slowly turning this podcast into a true crime in a weirdly
Historical true crime.
Not necessarily about murders, but about imposters, about frauds,
Fake royal families.
Exactly. And in that spirit today, I thought we could talk about some famous forgeries, some infamous forgeries, I guess. But that depends on who you are. Do you know any examples of infamous forgeries?
The one I know, like the one I'm most familiar with, is just because we spoke about it in one of my classes recently, is the donation of Constantine. That's a pretty famous one that was proven to be fake quite a long time ago. It was like in the 15th or 16th century. It was proven to be a fake.
Yeah, that may or may not come back, but thank you for mentioning it. But not for this podcast episode. This podcast episode, I have like a long list of forgeries, which we might not get to all of them because they're pretty dense topics, and I think there's a lot of discussion to be had just by their very nature. Because when we get into the discussion of primary sources and how you assess the accuracy of a primary source, it's natural kind of forgeries will come about because apparently that's very difficult to assess whether a primary source is accurate.
Yeah. Even archaeological evidence, we probably won't talk about this too much, but physical objects are often faked.
We will actually come back to this, yeah. But Rome being your recent hyperfixation, your longtime hyperfixation now. One of the examples like primary sources is was it Caesar's journals, I guess, in Gaul? I forget what it's called.
But his autobiography?
Yeah.
Or his, in quotations, autobiography?
Yeah, but how do you assess the accuracy of that kind of primary source, right?
I mean, it's difficult, especially because it's about one man. When it's not about large trends, there's not going to be archaeological evidence. That's the big one that sucks. You could maybe see if it's attested to by other written sources. Or if you're lucky, you'll have maybe an earlier copy and a later copy you can compare. But all that depends on how well it was preserved. If you just have one single copy, you've kind of just got to use some deductive reasoning and logic and just be really skeptical.
Because it's interesting, because when I say the accuracy of a primary source, which you picked up on, but in case listeners don't understand my meaning, I'm not necessarily talking about whether what a primary source says is true, right? Because that's just assumed it's all through the perspective of a person. You can never really...
There's always inherent bias. There's no one, even us or any other people who are historians, are biased. You just do your best to minimize it, but especially when you're reading people's accounts of their own lives, you got to take that into account. But they're still useful.
Exactly. But then there's another layer to that, which is whether or not the source you have is actually from the perspective from whom it is claimed, right? Well, I bring up Caesar because that's a document that was written a long time ago, and the originals, as far as I'm aware, we don't have them.
No, I don't know if we have the originals of any Roman document. We have some that are really, really old, we
have stone inscriptions, right?
Or papyri. And a lot of the papyri in Egypt, so imperial era stuff, sometimes you'll have I don't want to call it a first edition, but basically it'll be from around the time it was published, but it's very, very rare, and it's usually fragmentary.
Exactly. So they go through translations, and they go through copying with through, again, different people, including Catholic monks
who don't speak, or sometimes people don't speak the language, who are just copying based on what they see. And this often happens. It's one of my favorite anecdotes with medieval monks. When they're doing manuscripts of ancient texts, sometimes they'll shorten things, or they'll add little notes in the margins for the next readers to make it easier. But sometimes people, it's how handwriting is sloppy and degrades with time. People will think that that's part of the original document and try to incorporate it in.
Oh boy!
So you get the monks commentary, or the monks annotating stuff, and it ends up in the actual document.
Right.
So they sometimes usually they can tell, but you have to be careful with that too.
Yeah. So all that to say, primary documents are very interesting and also very difficult to work with, especially depending on how far back you go. Because, let's say if you have someone's diary of someone who died 20 years ago, as long as you can kind of verify the chain of custody, that's another part of analysis on the accuracy of a work is its chain of custody, right? And if you do that on very recent works, then it's pretty easy to tell.
And there's probably people alive who were alive, who knew the person, who
Yeah.
can back up some of the stuff. You know, there's more means in if we're working with
Exactly.
someone who's been dead for thousands of years. Or
Like
1,000 years.
an obvious one would be like I don't know, like Obama's memoirs. Like we're pretty sure that's Obama. Like he wrote.
I mean,
those,
we lived through that. That's like in living memory.
Yeah, exactly. And he's still alive, and we can ask him, right? Like that exists. But then when you go far enough back, it's difficult to get that because then like surrounding context kind of disappears, degrades. We don't have every single variable of every single thing that happened in history. Yeah. So what happens when people take advantage of that fact and just make something up? They just write something on a document and they're like, you know what? This is totally real. It's, you know, it's still difficult to do that, right? It's difficult to do that if you're trying to make a forgery that's kind of impactful, right?
Well, it also depends like what time period we're talking about. Today, it's much
Right.
harder because we have better technology. Like you can test all this stuff to find out if it's like ink that was produced back then or paper. But yeah, and I think it depends too. If you're trying to make like the donation of Constantine, it's both easier because the people involved have the means to do this, but also harder in the sense that it's got to be very, very legitimate because it's a political document. But I guess if you were trying to make like the diaries of some, I don't know, you wanted to make up and sell like diaries of an unknown like soldier from somewhere, you could probably forge that pretty easily.
Yeah, it's difficult to do that with scientific analysis, but even like to make it convincing, to like you have to have kind of very good knowledge of the context in which you're trying to have this document exist, right? And then especially today, if you're trying to make a forgery, it's difficult to use ink that can be like tied to that period.
Yeah.
Like it's not readily accessible. Like ink from the 1800s is so different from ink that's like commercially available today that like those kinds of things are easy to tell. So I have some examples here of some of these forgeries. All of these have been confirmed forgeries.
Okay, so we're no speculating today.
No like, I mean, I guess you could technically, right? Global conspiracy, whatever, but it's pretty conclusively decided that these that I'm going to tell you today are forgeries based off some pretty solid scientific, especially I included ones that are like very scientifically proven to be forgeries. Because if you go through like, you know, philological analysis or something like that, sometimes like, yeah, it's pretty conclusive, but
it's arguable.
It's arguable. This one,
there's numbers, there's data.
There's data. There's like chemical analysis. These are forgeries, but they're very interesting. So start with the first one here, one that I think I've brought up with you before, but our listeners might not be aware of, is the Vinland map. I should probably give historical context for, I guess, Vinland, the name, right? Vinland is the name of, I guess would be the land itself of the Vikings in North America, right? It wasn't the name of the settlement, but when they...
It's what they called... Well, Vinland is theorized to be what they called Newfoundland, basically.
Exactly. Like Leif Erikson...
Because like there's also Helland and whatever, we could get into that. But basically they call Newfoundland Vinland as far as we can tell.
Right. Leif Erikson goes there. He's the first European to set foot in North America, as far as we're aware. I think one of the previous episodes we speculated that maybe some Irish or Welsh folk
Yeah, the Welsh king
could have made it, but this is the most well attested first European in North America specifically. So the sagas had been around for a while, so it had kind of been floating around. By the 20th century, it was kind of well known, especially among like Scandinavians who, you know, kind of research into that history, that they had claimed to have been to North America. Is actually in 1960. It was like a Norwegian explorer, I believe, like went to Newfoundland and actually found the archaeological site. Exactly.
Okay.
It took a while to confirm. I think it was until the 70s that they did like proper analysis and again concluded that it was actually like a Viking base. It was just like, this seems to make sense based on like their techniques of navigation and what's described in the sagas.
and like probably also based on what they found there, like the
Exactly.
constructions and the type of artifacts.
Similar to Troy, right? The discovery of Troy, but they didn't use as much dynamite, thankfully.
Yeah, you can actually still visit Anso Meadow today, whereas the classical Troy got blown to smithereens. So this pre-classical Troy, I think, is they still excavated. But
Exactly. So 1960, they'd found it, and it was a topic that was in the air in the 60s, right? Because especially around that time, World War II and post World War II, Italian American kind of pride kind of created Columbus Day, right? Which, you know, people have said many things about Columbus. I'm not a big fan of the guy, but he did discover discover in quotation marks as people were there. Same thing for Leif Erikson. You know, he met people in North America. He's just the first European there. Columbus is one of his quote unquote discovery, I think, is generally agreed to be a bit more significant in the course of world history than Leif Erikson. So no matter what you think of, he's technically not the first, you know, the Columbian exchange, it's not the Ericsson exchange. Ericksonian, whatever. But, you know, that being a point of pride for Italian Americans, kind of a challenge to that, which, you know, some academics, you know, some in the U.S. specifically, this was a big thing because of Italian American. They weren't treated very well in terms of during the 19th and 20th and early 20th century, and they were on their path to more political prominence, you know, more acceptance, being considered white as opposed to not white, which for a long time, like Irish people, they weren't. Very complicated history. But in 1965, the day before Columbus Day, so October 11th, at that time, it was on October 12th, the New York Times comes out with a story. It was on the front page. It's not the headline, but it was still on the front page. 1440 map depicts the New World. 1440 map gives details of New World. So they come out with the announcement. The world finds out that there's apparently a map drawn out in 1440. This map was actually like made in Germany. That was kind of the theory. That actually depicts like Vinland. Like it's obviously very inaccurate, but they kind of have like a very northern area next to Greenland that says Vinland. And you know, if this is true, this is the first map in world history or in European history. You know, indigenous people had their own maps, like own systems of navigation and I don't know, cartography would be the right word, but you know, they had their own versions of maps for like oral history and stuff like that. But this would be the first European map that actually depicts the New World.
That predates Columbus.
Because this is 1440.
Yeah.
Which is like 50 years before, roughly, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 1492.
Exactly. So roughly 50 years before, which, you know, when you first hear that, this sounds pretty significant, right?
Yeah.
But is it? What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. You said this came out in the 70s.
This is 1965, yeah. October 11th, the day before Columbus Day.
I think it might have been more...
This was by Yale, by the way. Yale kind of uncovers this, and it's they own the map at that point, and they kind of release it to the press and then to the public.
I think it's significant in that it, given the time, it would have added to like the mounting evidence of this, because it's kind of a new theory that's getting a lot of prominence. But at the same time, they
I was just going to say, it's not a super new theory, but it's new in terms of its growing acceptance.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. And they found also Meadow, like, and they're starting to see more and more evidence. So I think it would be significant that it came out in a time when it's really in the conversation.
Right.
But I still think the definitive proof, in terms of definitive proof, the fact that there's an actual settlement that they were eventually able to carbon date, that was actually quite recent. I don't think this was in the 70s, but eventually they were able to carbon date to being like a Vike from that era is much more convincing to me than a map.
Right. No, that makes sense. Do you think it takes away significance of Columbus in you know, colonial history?
Like the fact that the Scandinavians...
The fact that this map exists and that Scandinavians are actually the first to like land in North America. The first Europeans to land in North America. Again, I have to make sure. They're not the first people in North America. There'd been people for thousands of years by that point.
They're the first European.
Time immemorial.
Non-North Americans.
Exactly. Apart from maybe Polynesians, but, you know.
There's so many asterisks in history.
So many asterisks, but first European.
Yeah,
confirmed.
Definitely first confirmed European. I don't know. I think it's a significant discovery. It's important that we talk about that because they were there for a while.
Right.
But at the same time, it obviously didn't have the impact. Like Columbus's discovery of America is what sets into motion the events that lead to colonization. Like what the Vikings were doing was very limited. Like it was settlement along the coast, and it wasn't permanent. It was primarily like for fishing and whale hunting and trading. So I would say, well, it's a really interesting historical note, and it puts into question like how connected the world was, and it's like some really interesting questions about that. But I think Columbus, if you were to say one is more significant than the other, I think Columbus is still more significant because he's like the herald of that era of the exchange of like both goods and diseases and people from North America and Europe, and it's when those two places come into contact like permanently.
Right.
Because like, I don't know if I would say it was forgotten, but I wouldn't say it was like most Europeans. I don't think were like had this conception that they were like, or at least an understanding of what really was going on over there in that other continent, if they even knew there was another continent.
Right. The most would be like Greenland, which would be as close to.
And they'd be like, that's remote. Like there's barely anyone there. It's like a whaling settlement. Like,
yeah. So a lot of people. So this is, this is very public, right? I think it's kind of rare because this is the first time this map is unveiled. Mm-hmm. This is like, it's known privately by like some researchers, but even then it's not like available like in the Yale libraries or whatever. Again, it's Yale that has this document. And their first move, like they have it analyzed by some people, not very well.
Yeah, evidently.
But, they show it to some people, but otherwise, as soon as like, they're like, all right, in 1965 is when they decide. They held that this. Okay, first I'm going to tell you how they got this map, right? So in Barcelona, there's this rare bookseller who, it's a rare bookseller, but obviously other documents because it's a map. This map is actually attached to a book called the Tartar Relation, which that is a legit like source that's like been copied around. It's a well-known It's a known document in history. Yeah. There's no question as to whether or not that was real, right? But the map attached is what's interesting. And they could tell it had been attached for like a while because it had like bookworm marks that like track through the map and to the book.
Into the book, yeah. Okay.
So they could tell this document was this parchment and this book were tied together for a long time. But as it would later turn out, no one really knew where it came from. The bookseller refused to tell anyone who he got the book from. Mm-hmm. And he mostly just says, I made a promise not to tell. So, that's suspicious. And Yale knows about this too.
Yeah.
They held on to this since 1957. Mm-hmm. So they held on to it for almost 10 years before they released it to the public. They know that there's this kind of chain of custody that doesn't exist because they just know, early, like I think it's from the 40s, the bookseller had it, 40s or 50s, I think from the 40s. But past that, they have no idea where it came from. But the claim is it was made in 1440. Again, this is even like, this is speculation. This is based off of basically the map, which maybe I should show you the Vinland map itself, just to give you an idea of what it was. The main speculation is that it depicts like Greenland. Well, it obviously Leif Erikson had made it to Vinland at this point, so it was past that point, right? And the map, it's a world map, which adds an additional layer of interest to it. But so it also depicts like Asia, and the depiction seems to be basically copied from like this other work that again is well attested. It's like a monk that traveled to the east, and like just again the Tartar Relation is kind of about that. I think it's based off of that mainly. So they're like, okay, it's pretty sure it's based off of that. This is the Vinland map here. So that's like the east is like, okay, well, it has to be after that point too, so it's probably around 1440, but it's claimed that this is before Columbus's journey. So this here is Vinland. This here's like Greenland. This like Iceland and stuff. This is like Canary Islands. Like a lot of this follows conventions of maps at the time. Mm-hmm. Like other than the fact that Vinland is here, and some stuff about Greenland I'll mention later. This is like very typical of like medieval maps. Mm-hmm. So really, it's just the Vinland part that's like super interesting, and makes this such like a groundbreaking discovery. Before we found out it was all bullshit. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just gonna read a bit of an excerpt of the October. This I guess is an interview from October. Yeah, I guess the Yale announced it October 10th, but it's released in the press October 11th. Yale University announced today the most exciting cartographic discovery of the century, the only known pre-Columbian map of the New World lands discovered by Leif Erikson in the 11th century. The map, Yale scholars say, provides additional evidence that the Viking adventurer actually explored the area around the Gulf of St. Lawrence and what are now Canada's maritime provinces. So this is not just, they got there and they set up a settlement, they're saying they actually explored the area, which is beyond what like the sagas explain. It's kind of beyond what, you know, most serious researchers were kind of like finding proof of. So it is significant in that way as well. It kind of depicts that they were there long enough to be able to make a map of it, which is in the 1400s is not easy to do, or before the 1400s, I should say. So they come out with this, and immediately it causes outrage, right? Because this is a day before Columbus Day.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, this was on purpose. You've had this document since 1957. We're a couple days away. They like, I think the word they use is like they were trying to create an ink storm. They were trying to like get this in the buzz. You know, this would become actually very good for Yale, because Yale would sell, I think, tens of thousands of like their book, basically talking about the document and its discovery, which usually university presses don't sell that many.
10,000 copies of a book. No.
Yeah, no, but they did. So obviously they stood to benefit and all that. So, you know, some people were just talking about like, oh, this is the deliberate, why would you do that? But others, you know, it kind of produced a little bit of a culture war. Turns out, you know, culture hasn't actually changed that much in the last 100 years. Because at the time, people immediately started going each other's throats. Some guy, like a bunch of politicians, they talk about it, like some judges. It's no longer something in academic circles, right, talked about. It is something in the public eye. A bunch of Italian-American, like, advocacy groups speak up about it. There's, like, some talks about, like, oh, someone calls Leif Erikson a startup, not a startup.
Upstart.
An upstart, thank you. Calls him an upstart, a guy who's been dead for hundreds of years, but whatever. Some guy calls the reveal of the Vinland map a communist plot.
Oh my god!
Because, you know, you can never. It's the 60s.
You can't escape it.
Everything's a communist plot. It becomes a big ink storm again, and because of that reaction, Italian Americans, you know, end up bad talking Leif Erikson and like Scandinavians and like all that stuff. And so in the Midwest, right, there's a big population of like Scandinavian immigrants and people descended of those people. They start getting upset. And so those advocacy groups start, you know, promoting Leif Erikson and like, oh, maybe we should have a Leif Erikson day. And it's like, it becomes a mess. You know, it's, I don't think LBJ who was president at the time, comments on it at all, but it's something he likely had to deal with, you know.
While he's dealing with the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement.
It's a weird thing to get caught up in. And, you know, again, it's like it's escaped containment. Like, if it's between academic circles and people writing articles against each other, whatever, it's one thing, right? But it's like when Pluto was like, it was announced that Pluto is no longer a planet.
Yeah, people took it personally.
People get like attachment to these things, especially at that time. Columbus was kind of becoming part of like the American identity, again, among Italian Americans, but also Columbus Day was a thing since like the 1930s, even though he had never actually stepped foot on like the territory, which makes now like at least the mainland U.S., maybe Puerto Rico, but I actually don't think that either. I don't remember that part necessarily, but it becomes this big thing, but like in the public, no one really talks about the authenticity of it.
Like if it's real, it's just taken as a given because, you know, those Yale scholars are.
Yeah, and plus, to be fair, it was never really about the map in the public. It was really about bringing up Leif Erikson as actually being the first European in North America. Yeah. No one's actually talking about, oh, the map, whatever. Well, not no one. The academics were, I'll tell you. There's some early signs of like people who were very skeptical of the map. But for the most part, it was just kind of bringing this tough topic up to like the public eye even more than it was, and it just created an annoying situation, which is kind of credited with kind of solidifying Columbus Day as like an actual federal holiday, because at that point, like every year
it changed days.
It kind of changed days, but also it had to be like a specific like executive order to have that federal holiday, and then it kind of regularized by that point. And now Leif Erikson Day is celebrated by some people. That wasn't really a thing before, but when bringing up,
there's a joke Columbus in SpongeBob about that, I think, where he celebrates Leif Erikson Day.
There's that. But it's it brings up this topic to the public eye, and I think it's kind of been a little bit of a discussion ever since. But for the most part, things have concluded as like, oh, Leif Erikson, it's a very interesting story. It's a cool story to talk about, to think about, especially about like Scandinavian culture, and like the colonization of like Iceland, Greenland as part of like that greater story, and how it relates to later colonization of the Americas from Europeans. But for the most part, like you said, people know Columbus's voyage was a bit more instrumental in
to setting up the world we live in today, anyways. Because
exactly, and nowadays it's less woo. Columbus is great, even though some people are like that, and a lot of it is more talking about the fact that colonialism wasn't actually that great for a lot of people. Right, That's still a tough topic today, a very political one as well, but it's one that's important to think about. Though back then it was less these people, who's a better person, and more Columbus is my guy.
Well, Columbus is an Italian.
Exactly.
Sailing under the Spanish flag.
Yes, but he is Italian.
He is Italian.
And that's
what matters. Even though he wouldn't have called himself an Italian, he would have called himself Genoan.
Genoese. But anyway, again, early on, there were a lot of people who were skeptical. In academic circles, it wasn't necessarily about who's the first, whatever. They worried about like the map. It's like, okay, well, the first thing was, again, the lack of a chain of custody. The fact that this map, as far as they know, just popped into existence.
Appeared in this bookstore in Barcelona.
Exactly. And the guy is refusing to say where it came from. To be clear, no one actually, as far as I'm aware, no one really thinks that the bookseller was necessarily like the creator of it. He might have been a part of whatever, because this thing sold for like millions to Yale. Yale paid a lot of money to get their hands on this map. So there might have been economic incentive if he might be involved, but it's unlikely that he made it himself, right? But beyond that, there was some signs of things that were weird. I mentioned Greenland earlier, right? Greenland is very accurately mapped, which when it comes to the southern part isn't that crazy, because that's the part where people actually live and people kind of map that area. Again,
there's settlements and there's Europeans around there.
And I say accurate by medieval standards, but it also has a northern coastline, which is weird for a 1400s map, especially before Columbus, like even before the 1800s actually, because the northern coast of Greenland wasn't actually mapped until like the 1800s. As far as people knew, there wasn't, like, it just kind of went into the Arctic forever. People didn't really go that far up.
Yeah, because it's just like an ice sheet. I mean, I think there might be indigenous people who live on the coast. I don't even know if they live that far up.
Yeah, for sure. But Europeans didn't go out there to map out. Not enough to actually have an accurate map. And
why would they?
Exactly. And the northern portion of the map is still weirdly accurate. If it was a guess, it was a very good guess of what northern Greenland looks like. So people saw that and they're like, on top of that, some coastlines look very modern, which, that's kind of a vague thing to say. It's like, this looks very good. I find it suspicious. It's like, take it or leave it. It could be a reason. Some of the the handwriting of the Latin, because it was Latin on the book, right?
Of course.
It was supposedly written up by a monk. It was created by a monk, so there was Latin text, and the Latin text doesn't really fit, what Latin text should look like at the time. You'd know more about that than me.
Like the calligraphy or the spelling, or
I think it would be the calligraphy, but possibly the spelling too. All I know is that, like they say, like the Latin didn't look like it was of the time. That it was, again, 1440s, which that is a philological argument. It makes sense, but by itself doesn't really mean much. But taken all together,
it's a lot of things that have to be suspiciously like.
Exactly. But there was still a sense, a lot of academics still accepted it, despite that. It's kind of chalked up to kind of wanting to believe it, right? They're kind of caught up in the idea of this kind of new discovery of, the Nordic people the Norse people did make it to North America. And so there's, people were excited about it. If if you're looking into it, it's like, it's a cool discovery, a paradigm shift, if you will. They kind of want to be a part of that. But alas, they did more testing. In 1967, they did their first chemical studies of the ink, because they did chemical studies on like the parchment or whatever. They knew the parchment again, the bookworms, all that stuff, even like the parchment itself, that was medieval. And to this day, that parchment is medieval.
It's just that he wrote on.
It's just that
whoever wrote on it wrote it.
The ink, they were like, it wasn't conclusive because even in the 60s, the ink study wasn't really great. But in the 70s, Macron Research Institute analyzed the ink and found anatase, which is a titanium dioxide, in the ink. They did not have titanium dioxide
in the 1400s.
In the 1400s. This was first manufactured in the 1920s. So, pretty conclusive.
Yeah.
But despite that, Yale would not retract. There was like doubt. They didn't double down. They didn't really talk about it. They just didn't like retract anything.
To this day, do they claim it's real?
Oh, they like by I think 2001 or something like that. In the 2000s, they like, okay, yeah. And then like they said like, okay, yeah, it's probably a forgery. And then actually in 2021, they said, okay, yeah, it's definitely a forgery.
Things move slow in academia.
Yeah, also it's kind of embarrassing, right? They
spent it's bad for the
millions of dollars
on a fake
map. Not of now money, of then.
Of
1950s money. They spent, I think it was like around 1 to 2 million, something like that, USD.
Yeah, not to mention the
$50s.
Yeah, it's just embarrassing for your academic institution too to promote this and like find out it's bullshit. Basically,
exactly. So I think what a lot of it was, they were kind of waiting for the people who were
cared
involved
about
in it to kind of get out of academia, and then they were like, all right.
For the public interest to die down. Like I don't think people really cared as much about it now as they did in the.
Yeah, it's like apparently even in the 1980s, some argued that it could have been like because of contamination. Like the ink thing, because ink was like the big thing that was like, okay, yeah, this was.
The problem is you can always try and poke holes in it, but it's just at a certain point you got to accept there's so much stuff you have to accept happen for this to be real that it's kind of unreasonable. Exactly.
So it's like, it was really by the 90s that like consensus kind of shift towards forgery. Again, by like the 70s, 80s, a lot of people were really distrustful of the document, but Yale wasn't really saying it. By the 90s, 2000s, to this day, is pretty conclusively thought, but it took a while for the consensus to kind of shift over. Like they did more tests. They did electron microscopy that conclusively showed the ink contained synthetic anatase not available in the 15th century. And yeah, it was in 2002, not in 2001. It was 2002 where there was a pretty authoritative study that the map wasn't genuine. And then in 2021, Yale publicly admitted the Vinland map is a modern forgery written on medieval parchment. It was in 2021.
Not that long ago.
It was not that long ago, but I'm
surprised that story got buried. What was going on in 2021?
Yeah, well, people were at home. I think they had like some archivists going through their stuff because there wasn't much else to do. And like, oh yeah, we should probably get back to that.
So some hoax, some doctoral candidate or like a professor's got nothing to do because he's just teaching online. It's like, maybe I should look into that Vinland map while I'm stuck in my house.
Yeah. So there's like a bunch of theories as to like who made it and
why
and all that. A pretty popular one was that it was a guy named, I think is Joseph Fisher. It was like a Jesuit scholar who really liked like early maps and kind of created it for many possible reasons. It might have been like to kind of bolster like a study that he was trying to write or like one of his like arguments or whatever. But it's kind of hard to deduce that fact. But for the most part, people believe that it was just people like who worked together in Spain who tried to make money, right?
They were like sell it to a university and
again, Columbus Day was a big thing. It was post World War II, the 60s, the US, people were doing pretty well. Research institutions were kind of like grabbing like medieval documents, especially ones connected to like American identity, like Columbus was. This would be a pretty good way to make a bunch of money, and then it just kind of blew up into a whole thing. That's basically the story of the Vinland map. Again, it kind of caused debate for many decades, but. Since 2021,
a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Again, since the 2000s, pretty much everybody who
cares enough to know anything about the Vinland map.
Exactly. They know it as a forgery. Now, when it's taught in classes or as like as case studies, since then it's taught as a famous forgery. Even though it took Yale until 2021 to admit it. But that by itself the fact that they admitted it at all,
That's good.
we should take as pretty good proof that it's a forgery. If the thing they spent millions of dollars of, or on, if they say that it's a forgery as well, then I take their word for it. So what do you think about the Vinland map? Actually, I'll show it once again here, just to show you.
I don't know. I'm like a little sad it's not real, just because. But at the same time, because it doesn't change anything really. Because I have a soft spot for that. I find that really fascinating. The Viking voyages to America. Maybe I'll do an episode on that sometime.
Maybe.
Or like Greenland and Iceland will do like their colonization.
Yeah, those are especially
because those are much better attested to, and we could do like a little side on Vinland.
Right.
But I wonder. This is like a weird aside, but I wonder like if they encountered any indigenous people when they were there,
Oh, the stories say so.
Yeah, and I wonder what that was like.
Yeah, I do wonder what that was like. That would be an interesting. I mean, I guess they do say what happened, right? They say
yeah, but I'd like to get also like I wonder if there's
more
like,
testimony.
Yeah, but I also wonder if there's like oral history of that. There must.
Well, supposedly, there's a big theory that when Jacques Cartier went to North America and he talked like the Stadacona, that they knew of Europe because of the Viking voyages there.
Like that they had an oral history of people coming.
Yeah, again, the Stadacona kind of stopped existing in between Jacques Cartier and Champlain, which was like a 50-year difference. They kind of like they don't know what happened to them.
Yeah, it's true.
So
they were either wiped out or assimilated or something happened to them, and
we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
There's 50 years. A lot could have happened.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. There's a lot of theories as to why they.
So we can't really ask them, but they didn't seem that surprised that people from across the sea showed up and had a bunch of weird goods that no one else in the Americas had. So, there is something there. But yeah, I mean, it really is sad that this wasn't real,
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not like it's our only piece of evidence. Again, there's also Meadow, which is like a treasure trove of archaeological evidence. There's the sagas.
No, but I kind of wish we had more ammunition to say that Columbus was an idiot. Because you know how Columbus's theory was that, the world was smaller than it actually is?
Yeah, because like basically he said there's no... Because in order for his theory to work, there has to be no continent in between Asia and America. Yeah. Asia and Europe. And it has to be much smaller because they only packed enough food for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, because there's a theory that came about during all these discussions, again, between Leif Erikson and Columbus about the existence of this map. The theory is that maybe Columbus, since this was found like in Barcelona, maybe he had like heard of like this copy of this continent. And his theory about the world was small was actually just an excuse to actually go to this new continent.
Yeah, except...
So he did know about it, but he was like
But I think that's it's so funny that whole saga, because that's why they wouldn't fund in Portugal. They wouldn't fund his trip, because they're like, all our like scholars are like, you're an idiot. Because I think it was an ancient Greek. I can't remember which mathematician.
Eratosthenes?
Yeah.
Eratosthenes,
who calculated this.
How do you pronounce that?
He calculated the size of the Earth with 2 sticks, like 100 kilometers apart in Egypt. There, like almost to a scary degree of accuracy.
Yeah.
So this was like
crazy, dude.
That's a misconception that people are like, the medieval people thought the Earth was flat. Like they knew it was round, and they knew it was really big. They just didn't know there was a continent. So like, it's suicide to go that way. Which is why the Portuguese were like, let's go around Africa.
Yeah. No, like even like the Romans knew about it. Like Pliny would write about like, when you go south enough, like once you get to like the equator, which they didn't call it that, but like sometimes the shade just goes straight down.
Yeah, or it'll be like the sun rises on the opposite side. There's like the stories of those Phoenicians that supposedly went around Africa.
Yeah, there's people knew about it, but I think this would kind of show not only did they know that the world was round, but he knew that there was a continent there.
That would, you know what? I will give you that. It would recontextualize Columbus a little bit and maybe make him seem less stupid if you could prove that he kind of made. Like,
it's just that like he was like, I can't make them believe that there's a continent there because like it's whatever stories from the north, like mystical whatever.
Yeah, and from
like
100 years more than that, 11th century, it's like 200-300 years.
So like in a way, it was supposed to like kind of take away from his like daringness. But in a way, it also kind of adds to it because, like, actually, he was smarter than...
Like, he wasn't just going on what was basically a suicide mission with a bunch of cheapo boats. The Spanish crown couldn't be ours, like...
Yeah, but alas, it was made with ink from the 1920s.
So it's not true.
So it is not true. But that being said, though, I want to move on to my next example of a forgery, which...
I wonder if it's one I'll know.
Well, are you? I don't know if I should. I don't know how the algorithm works. If it like really shuts down, like makes channels who say certain words like not recommended or whatever. But I want to say it anyway. The Hitler Diaries. Have you heard of the Hitler Diaries?
Yeah, actually, but like only vaguely. I only know that they were a forgery that someone tried to pawn off after World War II.
Yeah.
I don't know like who wrote them or why.
So our last one is 65, right? And
Yeah.
the debate starts from there until 90s to whatever. This was uncovered in the 80s. In 1983, the German magazine Stern announced that it obtained 62 handwritten volumes said to be the personal diaries of the guy himself.
I'm just curious. Isn't this around the time that like Speer gets out of jail and starts writing his memoir, and like there's like a big interest in this?
Well, there's a big interest
because it's like far enough away from World War II where it's like you can start to say that it's history, but still close enough for people really.
Yeah,
interested.
I mean,
and they're alive. A lot of the
considering Nazis. This is a forgery, they clearly identified like
a market
for this thing, right?
But specifically, I think this is around the time Speer gets out of jail and he writes his memoir trying to whitewash himself. And be like so I think there might have also been like a big interest in Nazi
but you'll see
diaries.
that a lot of people involved in this are also like, let's say, Nazi enthusiasts, if not Nazis themselves. I don't
think you want that title.
No, but they should have it.
I'm a purveyor of Nazi artifacts or whatever.
So Stern had actually bought this from, I think it's one of their own journalists. Yeah, it was one of their own journalists called Gerd Heidemann. He is the Nazi enthusiast. He was a big Nazi memorabilia guy.
That's always suspicious when you're German.
one of the famous examples of that is that he bought like an old yacht that used to belong to like the Nazis, and he'd like cleaned it up and like made it like usable, and he'd like use it regularly.
But was it like decked out in like Nazi memorabilia?
I mean, he also owned a bunch of Nazi memorabilia.
But I'm saying was
so
he
I'm
like deck it out in
probably,
like swastikas.
I don't know if it had it on the outside because Germany kind of had laws.
He's got the
about that
room,
kind of
you know,
thing.
in the back where that he takes his guests.
Yeah, and
like
he owned a lot of memorabilia, right? So that's why I say enthusiast, even though I'm not sure of his political positions necessarily, but given how much he likes them, I wouldn't be surprised if they're more on the right side of the political spectrum. So Stern paid around 9.3 million Deutschmarks. I don't know what that is in USD, but a couple million. Again, this is another case of a forgery, which it would turn out later. Again, this one they know who made it. Actually, there's no like whatever chain of custody.
Is it the journalist or did he buy it from a guy?
No, the journalist had worked with someone else who'd forged it. But before we get to that, I'll just say what happened. Again, it was announced 1983. Woo! There's the Hitler Diaries. This guy is interesting because people know about his life. His life is pretty well attested. We have
other people talking about
exactly.
him. We have some of his own writings.
We have some of his writings. We have accounts of his life, basically as far back as until he was born. Again, this is a guy.
It's a whole genre, though. It's like everyone like, oh, there's literally from the Behind the Bastards episode, we talk about them a lot on this podcast because we're very avid listeners. But in the Himmler episodes, they're like, yeah, his massage therapist wrote like a memoir.
Yeah,
like all kinds of people who are like vaguely, because it's the easy way to cash in. So there's all kinds of details about his life. So I bet that makes it probably easier in the sense that you have more to work with, but also harder because there's so many people who can be like, that's nonsense.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, first of all, I was just say like this is kind of difficult to do. It's groundbreaking because we'd have his perspective on all of it, right?
Yeah.
But it's not really as much as the information. There is no mystery.
What he got
for
up to.
him, for what he got up to.
It's what he was thinking.
It's what's in his mind.
Yeah.
People have dedicated books
to psychoanalyzing
this guy as like the purest evil, which I think seeing people like that is flawed. But I think there is something interesting to the psychology of such a guy who's like, he's so like he loved animals. He was like a vegetarian and stuff
smoking.
like that. Hated smoking.
But he was like on all kinds of amphetamines.
Yeah,
it's like
he's a bizarre guy, and I understand wanting to get into his mind. So when these come out, it's pretty exciting. Again, millions of dollars go towards this, but it's less about again the information within them and more about what he thought about
what it says about him himself.
Right? Because like speaking of Himmler's diary, I think
is real. Yeah,
is real, and then
it was really meticulous about keeping them. They're pretty well
exactly, and
they go back to his childhood. Those ones.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, as soon as this comes out. A lot of the more reputable sources, especially after the Vinland map, probably they're a bit more careful. But Sunday Times, Newsweek, these less careful sources go for it. And also doesn't help that Hugh Trevor Roper, who's like a UK historian, apparently he's like pretty influential. I don't know if you're familiar. I'm not familiar with his work.
I don't know, but one World War II history.
Kind of, but also from like 1800s history. I didn't
German history.
some of it, I don't know. He's a historian that's trusted. He's not. I don't know if he was like super well known at the time, but he's trusted by academics and by people because he is. He's got a degree. He's written books. He knows what he's doing. He declares that they're authentic after reviewing them. So that's really the thing where it's like, okay, now people are actually starting to trust it.
How many volumes did you say this was? 62?
62. I mean, it's his whole life. Apparently, it's from like the 20s to 45, like when he died.
Do you know how big each volume was? I'm like curious how much writing they had to do to forge this.
They did a lot of writing. I don't have the exact number of pages,
but like long, like 62 actual books.
It's long. Like apparently, like I said Sunday Times and Newsweek, they serialized them. Like it wasn't
okay. Like they didn't, because you can't just buy it like as a.
No, but like
I've got the complete set, all 62, and it's like the whole bookshelf.
That would be a crazy collector's item if you want
the original ones too.
Oh my god. But anyway. Despite this, again, like the Vinland map, because science, even social science, has a system of checks and balances of peer review, a lot of people have doubts about this thing. First of all, he was not known to keep diaries.
It's just not what he does.
Like some people like might have claimed it to be like, oh, they exist somewhere, you should find them or whatever. But like for the most part, to this day, it's believed he wasn't a guy who kept diaries.
Yeah.
He was, as opposed to, again, Himmler, who had a diary. He was known to write in the diary.
Yeah, it's also the kind of thing I feel people would know about you. Like,
yeah.
if you're that meticulous about your diary.
He has notes that exist. He'd write notes every once in a while, but he's not like someone who has a journal.
Today, I don't know.
Yeah.
Today, I declared war on Poland. I don't know what he would write in his diary. But
I don't know either. But anyway, there's
I would like to know, but we'll never know.
Another thing was that the handwriting did look pretty authentic to him, right? Whoever wrote this, if it wasn't himself, did a good job. But it also looked like a lot of good forgeries out there, which, again, take that or leave it. It could be a forgery, doesn't really mean much. Anything could be anything.
Right.
And then another one was some of the entries had some factual errors. When you write 62 volumes of something,
no matter how well versed you are, there's going to be some shit that you mess up.
Yeah, which in a diary is extremely difficult. Is extremely.
Is it day by
important.
day?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's day by
but
day,
almost.
But it's 62 over 2 to 3 cents.
If not day by day, it must be very, very meticulous.
It's very meticulous. I mean, some of it's very banal and boring because it's
because they want it to seem real,
Yeah.
I doubt every day of his life was filled with. He was homeless for a while in the 20s, so
exactly. But with all that, despite all that, right? It's still academics were like, it doesn't look right. He wasn't known to do this. Those are not very concrete,
yeah.
Right? They're very good to keep in mind, especially as it's just announced that the discovery is there. But for the most part, the public were like, "Oh my god, his diaries." Again, like you said, there was kind of increased.
But I wonder,
interest in them.
Because I'm saying a lot of this is around the time when a lot of the Nazis who got into jail started writing. What if they commented?
When was it the banality of evil? That guy
Eichmann is in.
When was he on
the
trial?
60s?
He's in the 60s.
I think it was in the 60s or the 70s. It was before this.
Okay. But yeah, like you said, the guy was released from prison.
But Speer wrote a book because he got let out. He didn't even get executed. They only sentenced him to I forget how many years of jail, and they paroled him.
Okay, so yeah, again, as part of that, there's a newfound interest in this.
And, they didn't really denazify too hard. There was a lot of them running around writing memoirs. I don't know. That's why I wonder if they commented on the veracity of these diaries. Like, did Speer specifically, because he's the big name.
But this wasn't thought to be real for very long. Very soon after, I think even within the same year, they did forensic testing because,
it's the 80s. We have the means.
By that point, yeah, but also the media, obviously, they announced it existed before they did testing just to sell papers, whatever. They did paper and ink analysis, which showed modern materials not available in the 1940s. Again, similar thing. The binding materials and the whiteners in the paper dated to post-war manufacture as well. Again, especially if you're trying to do an authentic forgery, it's difficult to get so much authentic paper and material.
Especially for 62 volumes. It's not like the Vinland map where it's one.
Yeah, that one. If they put in a bit more cash, they could find some old ink from a weird collector or something. But no,
but this you'd have to find an obscene amount of material.
Obscene amount. But yeah, so there was that, and there were some. There also, again, like I said, there were some mistakes and some like stylistic stuff in there, which are like, this doesn't seem like something.
Because we have a lot of his writing, and the way he writes is very.
Because the diaries isn't like, oh, we finally have his writing. There's a lot of his notes and stuff.
He's published books.
He has a book. He has a written style.
And there's like he published his collection of speech. Like there's stuff there, you know. And he has a very distinctive style that I feel would be.
Which it just again. So on top of again mostly the paper and ink analysis and the materials used to make it. It kind of reveals that like, oh yeah, it's someone trying to emulate, but it's difficult to do that for 62 volumes.
It's a good forgery, like it's not a perfect forgery.
It's an impressive forgery, but it doesn't stack up.
Well, we wouldn't know it was a forgery if it was a really good forgery.
Yeah, but you know, materials weren't great. Even if like stylistically, again, the handwriting was very good. Like you wouldn't just see it and be like, oh, does not match his handwriting. It does, and the reason it does is because it was made by a guy called Konrad Kujau. So this guy, the way he made money was by forging Nazi memorabilia.
Oh my God.
He would make like these notes and stuff of Hitler. Like he'd circulate them and like sell. Again, in Germany, it's like a black market because
you can't own this stuff. Yeah,
you can't own this stuff. You can't like this stuff. So because of that, since there's no authority to like test like the authenticity of Nazi memorabilia.
It's like, you know, when this is like a messed up compare. You know when you send in like drugs to test if they got like fentanyl in them? It'd be like, oh, is this a real swastika?
Yeah.
They don't got a service where you can like mail in a sample of your Hitler writing and be like, is this really Hitler writing?
Doing chemical analysis on my Nazi memorabilia.
To make sure it's real.
Yeah.
It's too illegal, so that doesn't exist, I guess.
What if they had, what was it, like the places where you can like shoot up heroin?
It's like a safe injection site.
A safe injection site, a safe Nazi memorabilia site.
Where you can go and like admire. It's like a guy opens, you know, like they got like a coat full of watches or drugs, and it's like, do you want to buy some Hitler writing?
You want to buy some? Do you want to buy some doodle that he wrote on a napkin once? Do you want to buy a love letter to Ava?
Oh my God. I also feel like to get into he was a guy who hated putting his name on anything official. Right. I guess a diary would maybe be...
A diary is very personal, right? Apparently they found it, like the story behind how they found it was that they'd found it in like a crashed like Nazi plane that hadn't been like discovered until the 80s or something like that.
Yeah, but also isn't it kind of weird that all 62 of them would be on the plane and happen to survive? You think he was lugging around all
again, the story was that apparently he might have given it to like some guy to like get it far away because they were like, if I have it on me, like even if it's like it's burned or whatever, like they'll tie it to me or whatever. It's fake, so the story doesn't really make sense.
I could spend all day poking holes in it, but it's not real, so like what's the point?
Yeah, they had a whole story to justify it.
Yeah.
Even if it, again, people had doubts, it didn't really stand up to scrutiny, and it was all fake anyway. But yeah, so Kujau apparently had also been supplying Hitler paintings, so he was channeling the guy. I don't know, he'd summon his spirit. He
found a niche, man. He
found his niche. You'll give him that. But unfortunately, this niche would land him in jail. Again, you can't do
that in post-war Germany.
But also, again, like I said, Heidemann was also involved. This went to court. They had. It's believed, again, supposedly, according to the legal system of Germany, he was also a part of this. Kujau would receive a sentence of 4.5 years. They were convicted in 1985. That's why I said really soon. Of fraud, yeah. And also, Heidemann also of embezzlement, because the money he received from the sale, apparently he had like embezzled, again, because he worked for it. There was like a thing where he also sent money to Kujau through the whole thing. So it was fraud, some embezzlement, and also probably like
possession of like Nazi. Well, I guess if it's fake, I don't know.
Oh yeah, also part of it, I should say here, part of like the whole mysterious thing is that it was found in East Germany as well. So that's why it's like, oh, there's no like real chain of custody, because like you have to hide it from
the Stasi.
From the Stasi, because or else they'd probably destroy it. They don't want people to like look at this stuff. Unlike Heidemann, who loves
he's a Nazi enthusiast. He has a yacht.
He's an enthusiast.
He has a yacht. What do you want?
He has the yacht. He has probably like an old was it a Luger, probably. But yeah, so they get sentenced to jail, and that's basically the end of the story. Again, pretty concretely, unlike it's still part of conspiracy theory. Some people are like, oh, it is real.
They're trying to suppress it. But this didn't have the staying power of the Vinland map.
Yeah, this one
too ambitious.
Exactly. The legacy of this is less like, oh, the scientific process, whatever. Again, other than that, like one historian that was pretty credible. This was pretty quickly disproved. It's more
They aim
about
too high. That's,
yeah, this is more like a story that kind of goes to show how like journalism can kind of suck sometimes.
how many volumes was it? 62?
62.
That is way too high a bar. They should have been like, oh,
what do you think they were going to read through them? It's like you can't read all that.
Yeah, but you can do.
It's like all the laws that go to Congress. They can't read all that.
It's too long.
Too long.
I don't know. It seems to me like, I guess because like you get more money if you're like, I got the complete set.
Yeah, and plus it makes it more authentic because if you're like, I got one book of the set.
I feel like that feels more legitimate. Oh, like I found like a fragment of like just the last years of the war.
But
like
you get less money out of it.
I guess they're not very. I guess I'm crediting them with too much.
You're crediting them too much. Again, this was not very well done. Like it just wasn't. Again, I don't trust in the intelligence of a Nazi enthusiast. I don't trust in the intelligence.
He has a yacht. What do you want?
He has a Nazi yacht, but like I don't know. Anyway,
I wonder. My God, that must have been long to write though. They had to like,
I'm sure,
get into his like. They had to pretend to be like Hitler.
Again, they made some mistakes in there. Like
yeah,
it was probably grueling at some point.
I mean, once you're on the 35th volume there, and it's like
but like it was correct enough to convince a historian, because that historian who said,
I don't think he read the whole thing like in depth either. There,
no, he'd read a part of it, I guess.
Who has the time?
But it was still like
it wasn't
he wasn't a part of it, right? Like he wouldn't benefit from it.
And like you said, like stylistically, it was pretty. It was mostly the disproven because of the material.
Yeah, analysis. It was the material analysis, because the rest of it was kind of
that's much more like
circumstantial.
Yeah,
it was not circumstantial.
If you add that to the material evidence, it's like
it adds on to it. But without the material evidence, it doesn't really mean
it's
much.
not enough on its own. I don't think. Yeah.
But I mean, that's just. I mean, what do you think about that? I think that's all I have to say about it, really.
I think it's crazy that there was a guy who was a self-proclaimed Nazi enthusiast in the 1980s.
I don't know how self-proclaimed he was.
He had a Nazi yacht.
He did, but I don't know how much he talked about it.
A closeted Nazi enthusiast, then.
I don't know if it's closeted. Anyway, it's just a weird. Also, he was obviously fired from Stern because Stern.
Yeah, we went to jail.
Yeah, he went to
He
jail.
defrauded his employer.
Yeah, he defrauded his employer and embezzled their money too. So
yeah.
I
think that goes without saying that.
But like that's what I'm saying. Like the editors, as far as we're aware, were
it was
also
only those
not
two guys
involved.
who were like.
For the most part, it was those two guys who really sold it.
Who knew it was fake? Like he wrote it?
No, Kujau wrote it.
Kujau, yeah, but I mean like he wrote it. Kujau.
Yeah.
My
He's
God.
the one who had the experience and the know-how.
Do you think that was just like his
Although
side
Heidemann,
project?
I'm assuming Heidemann also probably
help, but I mean
helped with like the historicity of it. But
I know, but I'm just imagining like that's his like project that he works on every day. He just like, I'm gonna write another page for chapters
again,
in
that
the
was his
Hitler Diaries.
gig, is that he'd sell like paintings and stuff.
It's
like,
his magnum
smaller.
opus.
This was his magnum opus. This was like it.
But were the other things fraud? Do you know?
What do you mean?
Like the paintings and the...
Oh, yeah. No, he fraud. That was his
Okay,
thing.
he didn't sell like real Nazi memorabilia.
No, he never...
fake Nazi memorabilia.
Like maybe he had one or two, but like his whole thing was forging Nazi memorabilia. Especially related to Hitler.
A jack of all trades. He can write, he can paint, just forgeries.
Yeah, but like he could only channel it
through Hitler memorabilia.
Exactly. This, you know how like artists online, sometimes they got to turn to certain parts of the internet to
make money. Yeah,
I feel like Kujau did that and he just never turned back.
He's like, wow, I like this.
Yeah, he was like, you know what, I'm really good at like impersonating handwriting or whatever. I'm decent at like painting things.
I wonder if anyone interviewed him like after.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
I didn't see any.
I mean, probably he didn't go to jail for that long. I know he died in prison.
No, I mean he was pretty old by that point, but I doubt it. And also, I just didn't read like much of their words because I don't want to give much. Like I don't want to.
But what I'm really curious about is, did the Nazis who are still alive comment on the veracity of these books? Because like I don't think they were around long enough.
I don't think so. And also, this was not in the public sphere long enough for it to like. They need to address it. This was again the same year they basically.
But also like Speer, I can't emphasize this enough. Was like in this heyday of trying to whitewash himself and be like I was like. And he was writing, he was doing interviews and stuff. So I wonder if someone asked him about it, like on a show or something.
You know what? That's a good question.
It's also crazy how much like airtime they gave to this guy. Undoubtedly
he didn't. He never.
Aww.
Oh wait. On the other.
I would be interested to see what he had to say, even if he would probably lie.
I can't find any evidence that he did.
Again, like he was really old, and he was probably more focused on his own book, and not being in jail anymore. But.
Okay, there's this Harvard.
What that's?
No,
we'll do an episode on him.
Apparently, they talk about diaries, and then one guy talks about how they interviewed him, but not about the diaries.
They didn't ask him. Okay,
I don't think he was asked, as far as I'm aware.
Shame, but he did a lot of lying in his book too. So,
yeah, No, that
where he's like, I didn't know anything about the Holocaust. I had nothing to do with that. I was just an economics minister.
Yeah, I was just around, man. What
Even
do
though
you
he's
want
an
from me?
inner party member.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
It's because he was the last one standing. That's why he was able to be like, it had nothing to do with any of
Yeah,
this.
he's the victor, they call. They talk about when history is written by him.
Yeah,
He won. He stands alone.
I don't know how he escaped. I think there just wasn't enough evidence when they did the Nuremberg trials to
I mean, a lot of it is like,
bring him up on death, like the death row.
yeah, I don't know.
Because he managed to, and like he got paroled eventually, or he served his sentence. I can't remember.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I have another one for us here, so I think I'll push past the diaries there.
Yeah, I was just interested if they had asked him about
I
it.
mean, this is I mean, there's a whole topic here about the kind of revivalism of like
like
that
in the
history
80s,
in the
yeah.
80s,
and the revisionism that was attempted in a lot of ways.
but part of it, which is those diaries, are part of it, but it shows how these kind of movements, people take advantage of it. Speer in his own way by
to whitewash himself.
lying, whitewashing himself, and then some people trying to make money off of it.
But
by
there's clearly
selling
an
forgeries.
interest in Nazism.
Well, especially in Germany. Again, there's a black market. You will not go to an academic and be like, "Is this real?" Because they don't want you to like report it to the police. So it's especially an interesting market that forgeries can happen. It's like
there's no oversight, like you said.
there's no oversight.
There's no safe Nazi testing site or whatever.
No, there isn't. But speaking of testing, the next one I have here, we don't have a bunch of time, but I wanted to put this in here because I want to say they're not all just written examples, right? Like one of them was an illustration, it was a map. Then I talked about
the books.
It was the books, the 62
Volume
volumes
set.
the set. But now I want to talk about I guess a carcass. Not a carcass. It's a skeleton. Is a skull.
Oh, is it the
The Pilden Man.
The Pilden Man.
It is the Pilden Man. So in 1912, amateur archaeologist.
You gotta love it. you could just do shit back then. You could just, if you had enough money, you could do whatever you want.
Before World War One, you could do whatever, especially if you're rich enough. Anyway, Charles Dawson announces that he discovered fragments of a skull and jawbone in a gravel pit near Pilden, East Sussex, England. He presented them to the keeper of geology at the British Museum, and then they christened it Euanthropus Dawsoni, Latin scientific names or whatever, and claimed to be the missing link between apes and humans. This is before
they found Lucy and all that, right?
Lucy and I forget the name, but
because they weren't digging in Africa where they were.
In Africa, they didn't find that stuff yet. There's also like the Peking Man's a pretty important one.
But those are much later. Those are after, or they're around, like either around World War II or right after.
Yeah, I'll talk about it. Okay. But first of all, initial reception, right? Like, the people were pretty convinced, right? This came out, scientists didn't really question it that much. Again, before we had an example from the 60s where people had kind of doubted. By that point, kind of academic rigor had developed a lot more, especially after World War II. Scientific racism, there was good reason to like, maybe if we take this too far.
Yeah, right now, this is the heyday of scientific racism.
This is the heyday of scientific
eugenics
racism.
And scientific racism.
So basically, the reason why they're like, this is an old human, is that they found it was fragments, right? So it was like skull fragments and I think the jawbone, I think it was whole, but probably fractured in one place or another. So it was a large brain case, right? Very human-like, but it had an ape-like jaw. So like, this must be the missing link because it's like has ape-like features,
half and half.
But it has the human brain. Because at that time, people thought like, okay, well, what happened is that, at that point, it was pretty much accepted among scientists anyway, like people who Darwinists.
Yeah, people who study the biological anthropology.
Yeah, biological anthropology. They're like, okay, we evolved from apes. It seems pretty clear by that point, but they didn't know how because they didn't have the missing link.
Well, they didn't have like Homo erectus and Homo
Homo. I can't remember any of them right now.
Habilis erectus are the big ones because it's like tools and walking. I don't remember the other ones. I had to memorize these a long time ago.
Yeah, Australopithecus is one of them.
Africanus, but that's not a Homo.
No, but that's one of the discoveries that would happen later.
Because I guess that is kind of the missing link. Then
that's one of the big missing links, right? But at that point, they didn't really have that, but they knew that there were these missing links, and they were actively looking for them, which is why.
Yeah, because like the logic follows that there was probably things
if
between us and a gorilla, or a chimp.
Exactly. And the theory, and this was like supposedly confirmed, that was that what happened is that they were ape-like features, and then they developed a big brain, and then everything else kind of happened afterwards, because then there was less dependence on like big jaw and stuff like that, less dependence on like, the hand, feet, whatever. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
It went from there.
We got smart and then we stopped looking like chimps, basically.
Yeah. Turns out it's a lot more complicated than that. And actually the large brain happened much evolutionary anthropology.
Yeah, but they also didn't know that like chimps use tools and stuff and all that. But it's
yeah. But this wasn't to say that this was like the only one, because one big reason why this was also accepted a lot in Britain, because woo Britain, was that before then there were actually discoveries in Germany. They had actually discovered Neanderthals at that point. So that was a discovery that was made. But again, that didn't really prove a missing link because it was like a human-like thing. They weren't.
And they coexisted. I don't know if they knew that then.
I don't know if they knew it then, but they'd found that, and it was a pretty big discovery. And there's the Cro-Magnon, which is in France. Which that one is closer to like the missing link. I forget what exactly the
timeline is.
The Cro-Magnon were, they were,
because I think they predate Homo sapiens, and I don't think they lived alongside Homo sapiens and
the skulls are pretty human like though when you look at them. Actually, no, I think they were Homo sapiens. Yeah, they were Homo sapiens. They were the first early modern humans to settle Europe. So this is like, if you look at this is one of the skulls. This was the same species as us, but it's like some of the earliest. And when they did chemical testing, like they were like, this is an old skull.
I see. But they're still the same species.
They're still the same species. So it's like, again, they didn't have the missing link. They had Neanderthals, which seemed kind of related, but it wasn't really like ape necessarily.
No, it's just like...
It was just human but different, which was kind of crazy. And it was a very...
We should do an episode on all this.
Again, this is all episodes. We could do episodes on like all of these, other than like the Hitler Diaries, because we shouldn't spend much time on that.
Yeah. But this I would like to talk about at some point.
Yeah, again, this is all about evolutionary biology. There is so much to talk about there. All these different discoveries. Just talking about the Pilden man, right? So there's all these in Germany and France. Britain can't be left behind in all these discoveries.
It's the time when all those people are competing for prestige and for
exactly before World War I, before they decided to beat it out of each other instead.
They started to kill each other in one of the deadliest wars in history.
Before that, they had more gentlemanly pursuits, such as digging up graves and colonizing the world
and fighting over colonies, not mainland Europe.
There you go.
Pillaging things, yeah.
Right. So because of all this, they also call him like the first Briton, right? It's like, oh, he's
there's that too.
And also the fact that like the first human with like a large brain came from Britain. Right? The first, again,
there's a lot of nationalism and like it's in the national myth making that's rooted in that.
You know how it goes. But a lot of experts outside of Britain were like, the skull and like, you got the ape-like jaw and the human-like skull, but
they weren't attached.
Are they attached? It could be like an ape jaw, like even early on they were like, this could be it, but the British were like, oh, they're just jealous. Again, the Brits were also playing down the other discoveries, like, again, nationalism. The British were quick to think it's real. Non-British people were quick to criticize, but that's just kind of how it works. It's like in the Cold War, whenever like the U.S. like made a discovery in like physics or like chemistry, or like, oh, I made a new element. Russia was like, no, prove it.
And then vice versa, same thing. They'd be like, you didn't do it.
Yeah, when it comes to these science and politics, when they merge like this always happens. Yeah, but going down to the 1920s and 1930s, because that's when they find the more real missing links. Like I said, the Australopithecus, Peking man's also discovered in China, which is I also didn't write down which one this one, which is my bad, but that one is an earlier human, I believe. Originally Sinanthropus pekinensis.
Oh Jesus, what is it now?
This is actually it's interesting. This is what earlier people thought, that like human evolution actually occurred in Asia, because they'd found like very early, again, Australopithecus, which is before humans in Africa, but they thought they went to Asia, they evolved to humans there, and then they spread out from there. Now that's not so much a popular one, but again, I'm trying to find which one this one was. Erectus. This was Homo erectus.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if it's the first, but one of the first, and one that was again, this is another one that can have a whole video about it. It was like very instrumental in like kind of connecting the scientific communities of like the Eastern Asia and like Western Europe, because in Eastern Asia, like the new Communist Party and stuff, later on would kind of forge these kind of connections over like common, if we're looking at humanity, all the nations should be involved. Instead of this, which is Britain is the best. We have the big brain monkey.
Little did they know they did not come from China, the Homo erectus.
Exactly. But still, it was still in textbooks in like Britain for a long time. 1920s, 1930s. Again, none of these other discoveries disproved the Piltdown man.
Yeah, no, it's just that
It just kind of was like, okay, but like,
where does he fit?
especially Homo erectus, right? It was like, okay, well, you can see the kind of ape-like features kind of disappear and the brain kind of slowly get bigger. At the same time, not the ape jaw with
human
skull. So people were starting to squint at it a little bit, but it was still commonly accepted. You know, let's not shake things up. Interwar period, Britain wasn't exactly doing so well anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever. But 1949, scientists applied a new method, fluorine testing, which is basically a way to tell how long bones have been in the ground, right? It's not just like the age of the, like, not like carbon dating or anything like that. It's mostly to tell how long it's been in the ground. So if it's been in the ground a long time, it kind of, because you can have an old bones, right? I'm sure they did chemical analysis on the bones. They're like, okay, the human, like all these bones are old.
Yeah.
But how long has it been in the ground?
Like buried, yeah.
And this showed that the fossils were much younger, like much, much younger. Like they were not ancient humans whatsoever. Then they did more tests in 1953. And they had, this basically was like the nail in the coffin. What they had discovered is that the skull fragments were medieval humans, not ancient. They were medieval. Very big difference there. You know, we're talking like tens of thousands of years compared to 1,000 years.
Well, you know, there were actually English people when those people died.
Yeah, you know, it's exponentially different. And what do you think the jawbone came from? Because it was not a human.
Was it just a gorilla?
It's not a gorilla.
Is it from around the same time as the human skulls?
That I don't know. But they just determined like what species it was. They did like DNA testing. But I'm pretty sure it was old, but again, similarly not like ancient.
It's gonna be something stupid, but it's got to look a bit like a human jaw.
Yeah, but still very ape-like because they caught that it was ancient human.
Is it like a gorilla or a chimpanzee?
Not a gorilla. It's an orangutan.
An orangutan. Okay, so it is an actual.
But it's an orangutan. This is like an important part with its teeth deliberately filed down.
So they're not like sharp.
Well, they're not. They look more human.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they're like.
Yeah, I don't know if orangutan teeth are specifically sharp, but they were definitely like made like smaller and stuff. Yeah, and the bones had also been chemically stained to appear more fossilized. But you know, that them being filed down indicates this isn't just we found some human and some orangutan and we got them confused.
Got them mixed up. This is like I found
this is someone was purposefully trying to mislead. And there are a lot of theories. The one I believe, and the one that's popularly known, is that Charles Dawson, the guy who discovered it, did it.
Yeah, that's the most obvious.
I mean, yeah. He also probably did it with some help. There's this guy called Martin Hinton who worked at the British Museum, and apparently after his death, they had found he had like a bunch of like bones, like animal bones, that were like filed down and stuff. Like they had like a bunch of like, changes made.
He had a creepy ass workshop or whatever.
Yeah, he had a workshop where he had bones that he'd just like manipulate. Animal bones.
He's a scrimshaw, you know?
So like again, we have the guy who discovered it and a guy who worked in like similar institutions who you might have known who also had done this kind of work. To me, I'm pretty convinced him and
they colluded
maybe some other people colluded. Yeah. There's also some like other wacky suspects. There's also, was it Teilhard de Chardin, who's like a Jesuit priest who apparently...
it's the second time we've had a Jesuit priest.
Yeah, but that one's like, he's just like tangentially related to the guy, and I don't know, English people don't like Catholics.
Yeah.
I don't know how true this might be, but the wacky one is people think Arthur Conan Doyle...
Like the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah, because he it's so like conspiracy theory thing. It's like because he was critical of like scientists and he lived nearby. This is not true, but it's funny.
It's funny, yeah. I thought it was gonna be something to do with the fact that he was like big into the occult, like he was they're filing down orangutan teeth to like do some magic or something.
Well, the thing is, the theory is that he was trying to like make scientists look bad because he made this forgery, and then these scientists, I put a fucking orangutan.
They believe
John. They fucking believe me. These scientists really think we're monkeys. No, we're mystical beings with souls, or whatever he believed. But yeah, this was a very important moment in science and in archaeology, especially like when these were confirmed. Again, the hoax was really revealed in like the 40s and 50s, which is again before Vinland, before the diaries, and I think it demonstrates how much things have changed since then. Like, the academic institutions, I think, are a lot more robust, so that even if something is kind of generally accepted to be true, there are systems of testing and of critique until things can be determined to be true or not. And I think that was one to end on, because it kind of shows, despite how Vinland Map and the Hitler Diaries, how those stories go, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
It could have been worse, and it's not. So let's be happy about that. So what do you think about the Pilden Man?
It's pretty interesting. It actually kind of reminds me of the story. This is like the inverse of this, but it reminds me of the story when they brought the platypus back from Australia. At first, they thought it was like someone had cut apart a bunch of animals and stitched it together.
Oh my god!
So it's like it's the reverse of this, where someone actually did that.
Maybe that happened in like
But it happened before this, so it's like maybe there was like an idea that like
they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't distrust bones that look weird.
That look weird. We don't know everything.
We don't know everything.
But
and also go Britain. We got our first big brain monkey here.
Yeah, the first smart people were totally British.
But, well, I was going to say sadly not. Just not. I don't care if British people are the first smart humans.
No, we know now that it's we most likely evolved in Africa.
Yeah, instead of going to Asia and then evolving out of there, which is a different story. Again, Peking Man will be a story for another episode, maybe. Again, history is full and dense of things, and but otherwise, that's the end of my topics. The end of my topics for today, because I will be continuing to talk about forgeries, but of a different nature, maybe more upsetting nature, but
that'll be for next week.
That'll have to be for next week. Any final thoughts? Any about any of them? Honestly, they're all very interesting in their own unique ways.
I would say I'm a little sad the Vinland Map isn't real.
Yeah, that is pretty sad.
I thought the Nazi enthusiast thing was really funny. And insane amount of dedication to write 62 volumes of fake Hitler diaries.
Imagine how, by hand.
Only to have it immediately found out to be forgery, thankfully.
So quickly. But they did make a few million before they got...
Yeah, but they went to jail, and presumably they had to give that money back.
Yeah, and they were pretty old by that point, too. Yeah. They were not young men, so... No.
And the Pilden Man I thought was pretty interesting. It's interesting because you see that a lot, though, and not just with human remains. It's a big thing in biology around this time, where they're like, this is why they distrusted the platypus, was because people did used to glue like animal parts together and go, this is a real like they tried to bring like unicorns back. They'd like glue things to a dead horse, or like, I think it's interesting that there's like that they weren't more skeptical of this, given that it's happened many times before.
Yeah, listen, nationalism is a crazy drug.
Yeah, it is.
Nationalism will make you believe in crazy things. I mean, I think... Okay, well, not the diaries, I hope, but like the Vinland Map and this one kind of... They have a lot to do with identity and nationalism in a weird way.
Well, which I think is interesting. I think uncomfortably so does the Hitler Diaries, but we don't.
Yeah, but those were disproved very quickly. People kind of attached to themselves to that. Like the ones that lasted longer. Vinland Map took a while because a lot of that had to do with identity and nationalism.
That's true.
In like a weird form of nationalism, because again, these guys weren't American; they were Italian and Norse.
Not even like, I wouldn't even call them like Norwegian or whatever. No, he was Old Norse.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe the Hitler Diaries, if the law, if there wasn't as much shame there. Then again, they were taking advantage of
but there's like a
weird form of
obsession,
nationalism.
Or like, if not nationalism, then like a cultural obsession with that part of their past.
Which, I mean, I do think it makes sense. A lot of these were from, well, I guess not the Pilden Man necessarily. I don't know how much money he made. I guess notoriety would.
But for him, it's more of a reputation, because he's an academic.
Yeah, but they all attach themselves to like a desire. Right. Nationalism desires kind of myths to make themselves
because it helps
more legitimate.
It helps the legitimacy of your forgery because people see what they want to see. Like if you're forging something that people don't care about.
Yeah, but you could also make much more money.
Or much more reputation. Like it helps you advance your career or get more money. Like you're not going to sell a forgery of a letter of a minor Venetian noble or something.
Yeah, and I don't think there's as many.
It's not as much staying power as the Hitler Diaries or the missing link of humanity or something.
Although it could be that we just know that those are forgeries because they have so much
Because there's so much
attention.
Yeah, and so many people try to disprove
Like,
them.
I'm sure people do forge notes of like a minor Venetian noble.
Those are
but
the smart
no one-
ones. They just sell like little things here and there. Don't get greedy.
I mean, to be fair, that's what Kujau was doing. He just did paintings here and there. Hitler wrote a lot. It might have been one of
Then
his.
he just like
Instead, he was like, my magnum, with the skills I've developed, I must work on my masterpiece.
my 62 volume. At that point, he should have just wrote a biography.
Well, there's a lot of those around.
True.
You can't sell those for millions of dollars.
True.
To an unsuspecting publication.
I wonder, well, it's because they obviously weren't aged. I'm just trying to picture what that looked like if it was just leather bound 62 hand.
I mean, the materials they did look convincing enough.
Yeah,
they had to do something. Even the materials themselves weren't old. They probably aged them. There's ways to age them that aren't that crazy. To chemically age paper and again bones because that's what they did with the Pilden Man.
Yeah, but what I thought was interesting with the Vinland map is that it actually was he just because I guess
Yeah,
when
the
you only
parchment
when
was
you only need
ancient.
one piece of paper, you can find some medieval manuscript somewhere.
Yeah, it's just that the ink on it wasn't real. But,
that one we don't know who made it. That I find very interesting.
Yeah, I mean they've done even up to 2024. I think they keep doing investigations because this is a weird case.
Yeah.
Because most of the time when someone does a forgery, they look into it, you can find the chain of custody, but. The one they didn't arrest the guy in Barcelona for forgery. Again, this is kind of
because they don't. He probably
it's
didn't make it.
intercountry. There's a guy in Franco is Spain, and it's in the U.S. that this became a big thing. And again, this is 10 years removed.
And for all we know, he just bought it from someone without realizing it was a fake.
Yeah. So
can't really prove he made it.
Yeah, you can't get a warrant on him. As much as
that's
you're the
true.
world
This is
police.
happening at the same time as that other episode we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean almost. This is the 50s to 60s.
It's a little before
the 70s that the Adolfo Suarez does his thing, but he's kicking around. Adolfo Suarez is around.
I wonder if he had
Spain.
an opinion on this.
They're in different. He wasn't Catalan. He wasn't around. I mean, again, this was a big. In Spain, I think there was a Spanish. There's this quote from a Spanish minister who went on a trip to the U.S. around the time that it was happening, and it's funny to hear what he says. Or no, it wasn't Spanish. It was an Italian guy. Never mind. But the Italian guy was like, "This map's an interesting curiosity, or whatever." But it's it doesn't change our understanding of history for the most part. It's an interesting thing,
it's
but Columbus is the
confirming,
one that matters, right?
And
it's just funny to hear an actual Italian guy be like, "Yeah, it's interesting."
I don't get what these Americans are all riled up about.
Yeah, because to them, Columbus is just some Italian guy who did something for Spain, right?
Yeah.
It's in the U.S. where it's a big thing, and I think even this got wrapped up in there's some. Around this colonial era, again, there's a lot of forgeries and stuff. And there were some theories that there was a Spanish guy who actually discovered the Americas before Columbus. I forget his name, but his name came up when they were oh, actually, Leif Erikson did this before Columbus. And then Spain was yeah, but we had two guys. We had a guy before as well.
We had two, so it's
So it's actually, we're better because we actually, colonized the shit out of the Americas way better. The Norse didn't even subject them to slavery. Were
they only had one
there?
measly fishing village.
Yeah. They just traded with them. They didn't subject an entire continent of people to, slavery and disease. Up your game. But I think that'll be it for now.
On that note.
On that note, that's not what I think. I'm sure that's what these Spanish people were thinking. At least the very far right politically ones. But yeah, with that said, I hope you found these as interesting as I did.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah, I hope the listeners got learned a little bit more about, primary sources and being skeptical and the value of scientific testing.
Yes.
And also, again, there's a lot of indications, even if you look at the writing and stuff in terms of the social aspect, that these did not really make too much sense. Mm-hmm. The scientific is the more conclusive data, but there are valid critiques about writing style and philological arguments to be made about these things. So, be critical, but don't be too critical. Sometimes people are telling the truth.
People don't always lie.
They don't always lie. But that'll be more relevant next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.